Welcome to the Be About Being Better podcast, where we empower you to make evidence-based, sustainable, and transformative changes for your health, leading to a more vibrant and fulfilling life. I'm your host, Abby Sasier, a non-diet registered dietitian, certified intuitive eating counselor, and master's graduate from Columbia University. I believe that we can't make lasting or meaningful change single-handedly. So I'm so happy that you're here so that together you can see that a diet-free, sustainable, healthy lifestyle is possible. And you can leverage that to live a better life. And remember my disclaimer, this podcast is meant to give you general information and is not meant to substitute or replace medical advice, a diagnosis, or service treatment. Hello, y'all. I am so excited to dive into this episode. So the guest that we have today, her name is Sharona Schnall, and her Instagram handle is Your Jewish Nutritionist. And I've been following her account for a while, and I am just obsessed with it. And she has really hilarious content, and she is always just talking about how the nutritious components of nutrition and aren't the only aspects of our health that we need to focus on. So she is really helping her audience expand their definition of what health is. And I'm like, I feel like I do a lot of that too. Like it's not just nutrition and exercise. And she incorporates faith and culture into her content and her healthy lifestyle, and she gives that to her audience. And she also helps to combat harmful nutrition and health information online. So she is righting a lot of wrongs, doing a lot of myth busting, which at Be About Being Better, we appreciate because we be out here doing that too. I'm really excited. She is a future registered dietitian. She is a graduate student in human nutrition at California State University, Northridge, and she's a dietetic intern right now. So I know what it's like to be a dietetic intern, and it is not fun, not great, but you learn a lot. So she's about to be a registered dietitian like me as well. And I'm really excited for y'all to hear this episode. We just cover so much about faith and health and how those intersect. And I learned a lot about the Jewish culture and keeping kosher. And it really is an amazing episode. So thank you for being here and listening, and I'll see you in the episode. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Be About Being Better podcast. We got Sharona Schnall in the house. How's it going, girl?
It's good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I'm super excited for our audience to hear your perspective on things and your knowledge. I think it's
Thank
so
you.
great that you're here. And I've been really looking forward to this interview.
Me too.
Yay! All right, so for us to dive in, we're gonna get to know you real quick, diving into the deep end. I always start with this question, but
Yeah.
what is something hard that you've been through in your life that ultimately has made you better? Like now that you're on the other side of it, hindsight is 2020. What is something that you've been through that now ultimately you're like, oh, okay, I'm actually grateful that I went through that experience because it's made me better.
That's really great that you asked that question because in Judaism there's an idea that everything is for the good. Like even if you can't see it right now, like later they're blessings in disguise or you might never know. So I'm like that's like such a good way to start it off. So even when something bad happens, we should try to think, okay, this is good too. And have that positive mindset. So something I've been through is so I was in a Jewish private school for preschool and first to sixth grade. And then I had to switch schools to a public school for seventh and eighth
Mm,
grade because of financial concerns, because it's like thousands of dollars. And I was already the
yeah.
third kid and other things that made it hard. And so I was very nervous about that because it's like a totally different environment being in like a just girls like religious private institution to like a
Mm,
normal public school. um and then it happened again in ninth and 10th grade. I was in a Jewish private school again, and then I got switched again to public school in 11th and 12th grade. So the back and forth was very difficult for me. But then like I did get to experience something unique that most people haven't been to a private religious school and a public school and gone to see what both
mm,
is like. So when I think about
yeah,
it, I think
it's
of
true.
like Hannah Montana, like oh, the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's so funny that you say that too because my sister, um, is also the youngest out of my 3
Mhm,
siblings, and
mhm.
the same situation happened with her, like, with my
Oh,
parents'
wow.
divorce. Yeah,
Yeah, my
my
parents
dad literally.
divorced too. Yeah,
Yeah, so you
my
feel
dad
it.
was
Like, my
yeah.
dad literally sat both of us down and was like, "One of you's going to public school, so figure it
Wow.
out." And, I offered myself as tribute, but then through conversations with my sister, it
Mhm,
made sense. Like I was going into 11th grade. My brother was a senior, so he was like, we're not
mhm.
taking him out for senior year. So he was out of
Yeah.
the question. But for me, it was like, I could finish up my last 2 years, like 11th and 12th
Mhm,
grade at the same place, but I was like, it also
mhm,
could be a good time to switch too. But my sister was
mhm,
gonna be new, and she was gonna go into junior high for 7th grade, and all of the schools in our area were
mhm.
coming together to the public school, like, everyone was new. Um,
Yeah,
so
then
yeah.
doesn't feel as bad when everyone's new. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So after conversations, like she was feeling, I mean, obviously nervous and similar feelings as you, but she ended up, it was the better
Mhm,
choice out of the two of us. And
mhm,
she ended up being really grateful for it as well. I mean, she ended up going to Syracuse for college and realizing, like, oh wow, I actually thrive and really enjoy and prefer a larger class environment. Like I would have never thrived at Syracuse in such a huge university for college. Like I needed a little.
mhm,
I went to Dickinson College in Pennsylvania,
mhm.
super small liberal arts. Like
Yeah.
one of my classes only had 3 people in it. Like I
Wow.
need that small personalized attention where she
Uh-huh.
thrives in a bigger environment. So, all right, awesome. Well, I really appreciate
Wow.
you going through that and diving us in a little bit about you. And I don't know if everyone in my audience knows this. I mean, they know that I've had a significant relationship where I dated my
Mhm,
college boyfriend for 5 years, but I don't know if a lot of people
mhm,
know that he was Jewish. And so we dated for 5 years.
mhm,
I loved his family, loved his mom. But I definitely got to
mhm,
pick up through their family dinners and their events and their culture that it was very common
mhm,
to prioritize meal times and have family meal
mhm.
times and just to make those very full of food, full
Yeah.
of love. And in the Jewish culture, food is definitely a sign of love. So I would
Yeah.
love to hear like your experiences with different Jewish mothers and how we can navigate some intuitive eating principles, respecting our fullness without offending some Jewish mamas that wanna make sure that we're eating good.
Yeah, that's a very good question and like a very tough thing, especially
Yeah.
I'm half Persian. And so it's a Persian thing to want to feed people a lot and a Jewish thing. And so when you have a Persian Jewish mothers, it's even worse.
Oh,
Like,
no.
so I've been through that a lot. And it's like in their minds, they're thinking you're starving. And in your mind,
Mm.
you're like, I'm full, but you keep putting more food on my plate and pushing me. And then you get mad if I don't eat it. But then it's like we don't want to
Mm.
be bloated and stuffed past fullness and everything. You
Right.
know, that's an issue. And I've like talked to a psychologist about it, and she was saying it might be from like generational trauma of like
Mm.
the when you think back of like their mothers and whatever, maybe they were like poor back then. Like I know there's a stereotype that like Jewish people always have money or something, but like there's a lot of times that don't also, and it could be they're thinking like, oh, like let's fill up just in case. Like that restriction
Mm.
mindset, like a lot of things in Judaism reminds me of nutrition. That's part of why like I
Yeah.
made Jewish nutritionist, because it's like how you talk about all the time on your page. When you have that restriction mindset that you're like, "Oh, I don't know when I'm gonna see this food again," it makes you wanna overdo
Mm.
it. Um,
Yes.
and so partly what could help is like, because sometimes I get mad and I'd be like, "Why do you keep, like, trying to force me to eat when I told you I don't want it?" And so it's like,
Mm.
it's good to try to think about, okay, they have good intentions, and it could be part of that, like, learned behavior over the years because of that
Yeah, that
history.
scarcity. Yeah, that scarcity mindset.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
yes. And so, something could do is to say like, "No, thank you," like with a smile, and don't hesitate at all. Because if people see you're like thinking about it, then they're gonna like push even more, and like just be
Mm.
consistent. Be like, "Oh no, thank you," and like maybe instead of like maybe they want you to eat their food and compliment it, and you could still compliment it and be like, "Oh, this looks really good," or "Wow, like I appreciate all your hard work." Or like you could explain how like I'm not hungry anymore, I don't want to feel sick, or something like that, because like they don't want to make you feel sick, obviously. Or maybe just like, oh, give me a chance to catch up, because like you know how it takes time for the brain to know you're full. Like it's even more difficult when like my grandma also has dementia. So like I'll tell her and then she just forgot that I said that and she kept asking
Oh,
over the
no, not the dementia. Oh, no.
and she was pushing even
Yeah.
before that and now it's worse.
Oh,
And
no. Yeah, but I like what you said too, is, like, compliment their cooking, say thank you, like, show gratitude because
Mhm.
they wanna be appreciated, and especially
Yeah.
moms love mothering. They love
Yeah.
momming on everybody, and if they are making
Mhm.
the effort to prepare this whole meal, they might not be getting a lot of gratitude and appreciation, so if you can be the one to show that at the table, like, "Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, this is so delicious, like, I'm good for now, but thank you." Or wonder if you
Yeah.
could say like, "Oh, I'm, like, still working." Like, I think, it
Oh,
takes
still
like you
working on it?
said.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too.
Yeah.
Or like eating slower because it's like whenever they see your plate is starting to look empty, they want to keep filling it up. They should keep being full. So you just
Yeah.
take longer and chew it longer and things, or like just leave the extra food on there. Like don't force. So if they see there's food on there, then they'll like say less. And another thing is like this reminds me of that we could touch on later too with kosher, that like sometimes people offer me food that's not kosher and I don't
Mm,
want it because I keep that. And if I like hesitate, I'm like part of me hesitates because I feel bad to say no. They're like, oh, they're gonna get offended or something. But then I'm like, oh no, I don't think so. But then they keep pushing and it like makes me uncomfortable when I don't want to eat it. So it's like similar with the
yeah.
like the lessons we learn from like nutrition and talking with each other can apply to so many things. And
Mm.
I guess it's just a acknowledging where they're coming from, like we were saying, just being like, "Oh, I know you want me be full or like enjoy this too, but like I'm okay. I'm feeling good," or something like that maybe.
Right, like, I've had enough, like, I'm really
Mhm.
satisfied, like, that was delicious, I feel good, and I like
Mhm.
what you said too, is being confident when you say it, because if you're, like,
Yeah.
hesitating, they might interpret that as, "Oh, did they not like the cooking, or are they nervous, or what's going on?" So if you say it with confidence, that can go a long way.
They could think, "Oh, maybe you're just being nice and shy and like you want to eat it. You just want to be told like, "No, eat, eat, eat." Like maybe they're just being nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but yeah, like, if you're actually full and you're good, don't be nervous about it, just be confident and say it. So yeah,
Mhm.
could you dive into a little bit more about keeping kosher? What are,
Mhm.
the rules for that? And also, what are some misconceptions or common myths around keeping kosher?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So, one of the main things is you don't eat meat and milk together. So, for example, can't
Mhm.
have a cheeseburger, like not just milk, like dairy products. And meat is not just beef; it would also include, like chicken and turkey. But something like fish wouldn't be counted as meat. That'd be a separate category. That's like parve. That's neither meat nor dairy. Parve isn't the same thing as vegan. It's similar, but like an egg could be parve, neither meat or dairy, but egg is not vegan. So it's not exactly the same. But like yeah, you won't find any milk or animal products in something that's parve. The purpose of parve is like let's say I'm eating a meat dinner of chicken and I want some kind of like chocolate dessert after. So it makes sure that oh there's no it's not milk chocolate, there's no milk at all added, it's like completely dark. And
Mm.
another part of it is that you want to look for kosher symbols. So like there's certain animals you can and cannot eat. Like for example, we don't eat shellfish, like no lobster and crabs and shrimp and squid and things like that. Like our version of sushi is like very different. Um, and you don't have pig, you don't have catfish, you don't have birds of prey. And part of it is because you are what you eat. And so you don't want to have that kind of personality. And then I feel like there's so many things to say about kosher. I'm like, wait, did I say this?
I would assume that most people don't know. And, there
Yeah.
was in my college cafeteria, they had the kosher line and like a specific designated
Oh yeah.
section. And sometimes I would go in the line because I'm like, oh, that looks good. But I had no idea what it meant to keep kosher. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I learned a little bit about this for my RD exam.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be prepped for that section for sure. You'll be checking all those boxes because it'll give you a list of meals. Like one of
Yeah.
them will be like a cheeseburger with fries or, something with
Yeah.
shellfish and like which one,
Yeah.
if you are Jewish, like which one could you eat? And then,
Yeah.
they have other ones for like different religions as well. So you have to kind of like
Yeah.
read through like,
Oh
oh, what's for this religion?
yeah. So, like, that's a good point you made about the cafeteria line. Like, sometimes they'll have a kosher section and it's all, like, packaged and taped up and things because they have to make sure not to get anything else in there. And because they couldn't make it in that kitchen, they shipped it from somewhere else because you need a
Mm,
kosher kitchen for kosher. Just like someone, if they have, like, a severe gluten intolerance with celiac disease, like, they can't even have something that the pot and pan that was used to cook gluten is now used to cook their food, even though there's no gluten in their food. It still transfers a little
the
bit.
cross
It's just
contact,
yeah,
yeah.
the cross-contamination, like, you with kosher too, has to be certain pans and things are just for kosher. You have certain pans and microwaves that are just for meat and are just for dairy, and it transfers through heat. And another thing is to look for kosher symbols, because, for
Mm,
example, like, the meat is slaughtered a different way, and, like, they do a blessing on it, but they also check in the lungs if there's diseases. They can't use a gun. They can't take an animal that was already dying and sick. Like, they do, like, more humane practices. Like, they do it on a certain nerve and with a really sharp knife that they die basically instantly. They're like, we don't want the animal to suffer and feel pain. And they put also some more spaces of, like, where the cattles are raised. They're not squished as much. And different things like that is part of it. Or also, what's interesting is a lot of products, even though they'll say vegetarian or vegan on it, they could still have animal things added to it if it's under a certain percentage. Like, like how trans fats aren't supposed to be legal, but, like, it could still be if it's under 1% or 0.5 or something like
mm,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they don't have to report everything. So it's the same that, like, there will be vegan products like juice or dry fruit or something like that that, like, they'll use some insects for coloring, a little bit of the insect juice, but they're not gonna write it on the ingredients label, and an
Right,
insect is
'cause it's
still an
so
animal.
small.
So
Oh
that's,
my
like, that's not
gosh.
vegan. Or, like, there's some,
Right.
companies like Nutrisystem, they have some kind of vegetarian weight loss things, and
Oh,
oh,
no.
yeah, it says all vegetarian, but, like, they use, like, animal little products things for some of it. If you, like, look it up, every article about it.
Wow. Yeah, if you needed another reason to not do Nutrisystem other than diets don't work, they're lying on their labels and you're eating insects.
Yeah, like, I wouldn't want those things either, and then I found that out too, and I'm like, "Oh my god," and this happens with,
Wow.
a lot of products, and so this with kosher, it's like a stricter supervision, and, like, they hire extra people to look at things, stuff separate to make sure it is what it says it is. And there's
Mhm.
also different levels, like, for the dairy products, there's Chalav Yisrael, which is, like, a Jewish person did it, and then there's regular, which, like, a lot of products are, like, the OUD. So if someone's not sure if something's kosher and they wanna know, you could just Google it, and it's really easy, and there's a lot of different symbols to look for. The OU and the OK are some of the most popular, and a lot of products are actually kosher that people eat that don't even realize they don't keep kosher. Like, Cheez-Its are kosher, Chex Mix is
Oh,
kosher,
okay.
like, a bunch of, like, products you see everywhere. And yeah, those are some of the main things. I feel like there's so much to
Yeah,
say,
I
but
love
yeah.
that. Are there any other, like, myths or misconceptions you wanna talk about, or do you feel like you hit on those?
Oh, yeah. So, a lot of people think that kosher is healthier, and they're like, "Oh, I wanna do the kosher diet to, like, lose weight or just, like, to be healthy or this or that," and, like, it's not for that. It's very similar, and it's more, like, for spiritual reasons,
Mm,
and, yeah, that's a big myth. Uh, Another thing is some people say, like, you have to have a separation, like, not just you can't, like, some people think, "Oh, if I'm eating it separate, like, I'm having a hamburger, and I take a bite of that, and then I drink a glass of milk, and then this, I'm not eating in the same bite, it's okay, it's separate." No, but it's still part of the same meal, so you can't have, like, a or, like, you can't be like, "I'm gonna have a dairy dessert, but, like, a meat dinner." Like, it has to have a separation that, and it's also based on the customs of where you're from. Some people will wait 3 hours after eating meat until you can have dairy. Some will say 1 hour, some will say 6 hours. And then for dairy, some will wait 30 minutes or an hour after because meat takes longer to digest. So that's why there's more separation between. So yeah, that might be a myth too. That's like, oh, you only have to wait an hour or this. And it's like, no, it depends on your custom. Or that people think, oh, this is kosher, but for some restaurants or something, but some places they'll write kosher even though they're not actually. It's just kosher
mm.
style, which means like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is Jewish cultural food," or "We just don't eat milk together." So,
Yeah, so there definitely are a lot of rules to keep, and,
yeah.
living in our diet culture world where people are so like, we already have a lot of, pressure and rules externally outside of a
Mhm.
religious context. Do you
Mhm.
find that, people in the Jewish community are even more at risk for disordered eating and eating disorders because of so many food rules?
Wow, that's a good point. Like, I never thought about that, but I don't think so because, like, it's like there's still a lot of different options with kosher, and then I don't know, I grew up with it, so I'm just used to it, so it's normal to me. Sometimes people develop it later on, but like I've never heard about that, about it making more disordered eating, but there still are other issues that are more common in the Jewish communities with nutrition that I feel
Mm,
like there's a culture to just like constantly eat and to overdo it and to have like
mm,
multiple different courses. And then it's like even when you're like so stuffed, like I'm about to explode, I feel like I need surgery. And there's so many different things. They're
mm.
like, oh, let's have
Yeah.
more. And
Yeah,
then
it sounds like they could use some intuitive eating, respecting our fullness for sure.
yeah, and it could seem like you're being rude that, "Oh, you don't wanna try
Mm,
this or this," and there's, like, a million different things. Or, like, something else that's a concern with the Jewish community
mm.
is that, like, we have to take care of our health is what God wants, so why are we, like, keeping so strict to certain religious practices, but then a lot of religious people are, like, not eating nutrient-dense food and overeating and not exercising and other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had one of our clients come on and she observes Ramadan and she
Oh,
came
yeah.
to talk about how to approach that month of fasting
Mhm.
with a non-diet mindset. And she was really fortunate to be in one of our coaching programs at the time of Ramadan. So I could be working with her on that. And then we recapped her experience on the podcast
Mhm.
because there were certain things that she had to keep. But what kept her going, I mean, definitely listen to the episode because there's more nuance to what I'm about to say. And
Mhm.
we'll link it in the show notes. But she kept her eye on the spiritual aspect.
Yeah.
And she kept, the spiritual practices, or for us it would be scriptures and the word, that keeping those at the front of mind, so
Mhm.
that even though yes there are certain rules to keep from a religious aspect, like not letting diet culture come in and infiltrate that, but keep it on the why are we doing this, what is the how is this
Mhm.
getting us closer to God or closer spiritually, more
Mhm.
connected,
Mhm.
transforming us in a spiritual way. Like if you keep your eye on that, then
Yeah.
you have the right motivations and doing it for the right reasons. Because I also see it in the Christian community. Like
Mhm.
my church does, prayer and fasting, and
Mhm.
people will be starting a new diet and they're like during the prayer and fasting, or they'll do a 3-week fast and they're not doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it to lose weight and doing it out of vanity. And that
Um,
is counterproductive, very disordered. So when we keep our
yeah.
eye on the spiritual aspect and the why, that can be helpful to mitigate someone's risk, but still,
Mhm.
observing their religious beliefs.
Yeah, and I think what could help is if you have like a community supporting you, like if you're gonna do a religious fast,
Mm.
be in your church or temple, like around other people and doing your prayers and learning and like remembering, like to help you see, oh, that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely need community. I talk about that so much on the podcast, that there is
Mhm.
such power in community, but you need that for accountability, and you need
Yeah.
close people in your community that would hold you accountable and like lovingly correct you and point those things out to you. People that you have trust with that would be able
Mhm.
to, see those things and call that out to you, so that you are keeping your eye on the spiritual aspect versus
Yeah.
making it very disordered. Well, September is a really big month
Yeah.
for Jewish holidays, and
Mm.
so that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, was to, help our audience members that observe those holidays. How can we best
Mhm.
optimize those? So what are some like common cultural dishes and how would you make those more nutrient dense?
Thank you for asking. So for Rosh Hashanah, which is like the Jewish New Year coming up, common thing is apples and honey. And someone might be like, "Oh, honey, there's sugar, bad." Da, da, da. Okay, but like we don't want to think bad and good as you teach.
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
and like I feel like that's very common in Jewish culture or other places too, especially when people
Mhm.
learn, oh, you study nutrition and they start getting defensive, like, oh, I don't usually eat these bad foods or this or that
Yes.
around me. And I'm like chill. I'm not judging you. So, um, but so we could think like, okay, approach it with the mindset, like how you say there's no moral area with food. Like it's just food.
Mm.
And some are more
Yes.
nutrient dense, some are less nutrient dense. And we just want to do what makes us feel good. Like if we overdo it and have a bunch of apples and honey because we feel like, oh, I don't let myself have this ever, then we might feel sick and like we're not gonna be satisfied, or it might be extra hungry because we're like, that's not balance, whereas like the protein and fat and things. So
Mm.
maybe if someone's gonna do that, like, you still fill up on, like, your vegetables and your protein, like, eat, like, um, your meals and, like, enjoy it and savor it and, like, with mindful eating, like, you're gonna eat slowly, you're gonna, like, appreciate it. I notice sometimes if I eat food, like, while closing my eyes a bit, it, like, tastes even better, and because I guess one of your
Mm.
senses are off, the others are stronger, like, that's something I like.
Yes.
And so yeah, and then another thing is like sweet noodle kugel, which is a lot of sugar and things like that. But you could do again just like pairing it with the protein and just I would say, like, have 1 or 2 pieces, and just not be having, like, going back and forth, like, in a rush. Like, I know sometimes I've overdone it done it on treats because maybe part of me felt guilty, like, "Oh, I shouldn't be eating this. Let me just, like,
Mm.
have as much as I can now. I won't have it
Right.
later." Or, like, yeah, there's a scarcity mindset you're talking about. But, like, I think a lot of how we could get through the holidays is the mindset and preparation that like don't say, "Oh, I have to save my calories all day and then because I'm going to eat these things at night." And then we're like starving and like have way too much and it's hard to get through the day. So just like eating regularly and balanced meals, like drinking enough water. Um Another thing is like we have a lot of fruit for some holidays, like Rosh Hashanah, and the pomegranates, dates, and other things. So I'd say like, uh, maybe like not having too much of the dates because those are like really intense for me at least. I like I have like a couple, and I'm like that's satisfying enough. I know some people like to put peanut butter in their dates. I've seen that as a thing. I guess that could give it some more protein and fat. Or like
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, fried eggplant is another common thing. I guess if we want to make it more nutritious, we could bake it. And then gefilte fish is another common thing, which is like different fishes together. It's already like pretty healthy. It's an appetizer, and it's recommended like in Jewish culture from like a ancient scholar not to have fish and meat on the same plate and have fish
Mm.
first as the appetizer, which is interesting. Another thing is lasagna is a common Jewish food I see served. It's like a bunch of cheese and pasta. We don't add any meat to it, which a bunch of people find strange. They're like, I've never had it with that. And I would say make it more balanced, like add a bunch of broccoli and vegetables to it. Like that could bump up the fiber and like also taste really good. Maybe add some like black beans to it. I love black beans with cheese. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, these are some examples. There's challah bread. You could have whole
Mhm.
wheat if you wanted it, or balanced. Or sometimes when I've done that, it was too intense for my family, so at least half whole wheat. Or like if we want less sugar because we're already having desserts, and you could do more of a savory challah that's more with like rosemary and garlic and herbs that
Mm.
tastes really good too.
Yum, that sounds so good. What
Yeah.
would you put on matzah? Because obviously matzah can be
Mhm.
very plain tasting, but you can almost make like as if you were gonna do like an avocado toast, like, you could
Oh my
have the
god, I was
matzah
about
be
to
your
say that.
base. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, what would you recommend putting on matzah?
Yeah, matzo is great for Passover, and I still eat matzo sometimes during the year, like yesterday, and I put avocado on it is good, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Some turkey could be good on it for protein. It
Mhm.
tastes really good, the combo actually, or avocado and egg, um, or like matzo pizza. We like to do too,
Ooh.
and it's good. And I guess like also putting some veggies on it could be good. And um, you can't have, like, pepperoni on it because that's meat. I guess could do a soy meat, though, if you still wanted something similar to that and some more protein.
Yeah. Could you
Mhm.
put chicken on there or no?
Yeah, you could put chicken, like, if it's not with the cheese, like, just chicken and matzo, but not, like, on the
Okay.
pizza. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. Well,
Or
got a lot of
sometimes
ideas there for sure.
or sometimes people have matzo brie, which is kinda like a omelet in a way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, isn't that when you, like, mix the matzah into, like, the egg scramble
Yeah,
almost?
yeah. Kinda you break it up, you soak it, and it's kinda similar to, like, a matzo omelet or matzo French toast or something like that, but, like, during Passover, it really is a struggle, like, there's a lot of limitations, especially for, like there's Ashkenazi and there's Sephardi, which are, like, 2 different types of, like, Jewish people from, like, the region you're from, and so when you're Ashkenazi, like, you can't have rice during Passover, you can't have corn, you can't have, beans and bread and a bunch of different things, it's not just no bread, so then it could be a struggle that feels like all there is to eat is, like, potatoes and sugar and things, but what you could still do is, like, even fish on the matzah, I think could be a good idea with avocado and other things, or, like, have a lot of vegetables and protein and things, and it's definitely a struggle, but, like, as you said, we think about it as for the spiritual reasons, and we're like, "Oh, we're not gonna do this forever," and could think, "Okay, even if we felt like we were bad," quotation marks, which, like, we need to not shame ourselves anymore, like, I know in the past, I felt like that. I was like, "Oh, I had so much grape juice during Passover because you have, like, the 4 cups of wine." I'm like, "Oh, this is so much sugar," and now I feel like I need to restrict myself or I feel guilty, but then that just leads to unhealthy behaviors. So I feel like just enjoy, savor the moment,
Mhm.
understand why, and then move on from it, right?
Right, exactly. And the Bible even talks about like feasting and like having these elaborate meals
Mhm.
and taking time to celebrate.
Mhm.
And that's definitely in there in both Old Testament and New Testament, and so we shouldn't feel guilty around the holidays, and
Yeah.
we should really take the time to celebrate and be present with the people that we're with, and like you said, taking time during the meal to slow down and
Yeah.
savor each bite. And our episode from the week before talked about how to honor our hunger and respect our fullness, so if y'all missed that
Mhm.
episode, definitely go
Yeah.
and listen to that because you'll gain a lot of tips from there that will help you when you enter these seasons.
Yeah, and being happy at certain points is actually like a commandment or a mitzvah from the Torah. So you're so right. Like we should enjoy and celebrate. Like I know there's a diet culture thing that's like, oh, food is only for fuel. It's not for enjoyment. But like, no, that's not true, and that's not what it should be. And like, we should enjoy our life and include our cultural dishes too.
Yes, I completely agree. There are other needs that you can meet, other purposes for food, not just for fuel. They can meet an
Mhm.
emotional, mental and emotional need, a social connection, celebration.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Love that.
Mhm.
Now, what are some scriptures that you hold on to and you keep focused on either during these
Mhm.
holidays to keep you focused on doing the food rules for the right reasons or just in general for
Mhm.
living a healthy lifestyle?
Yeah. So Maimonides was an ancient Jewish philosopher and scholar. He would warn against extremes, and even he
Mm.
advocated for rest and routine. And so that's a
Really?
really good thing, yeah, to think about and be
Yes,
like,
that's so
oh,
non-diet. Yes, I
yeah.
love that. We need
So
to rest. We need to avoid extreme. Diet culture wants
yeah,
you to do the extreme
the
thing.
all
It's
or
like,
nothing.
no. Yes, yes. Okay, that's so good. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, yeah, no, it's okay. And, it's just like if someone grew up not that religious, or a lot of people that are Jewish, they don't even realize they were Jewish when they grew up, and then later they figure it out, and so they wanna start becoming more religious, and it's recommended, don't just take on everything at once, like, if they wanna start keeping kosher, like you're saying, there's a lot of rules, it can be complicated, don't just like, "Oh, I'm gonna be all totally kosher from now on," like, small steps, like you always talk about, like, okay, how about
Mm,
I'm first not gonna have meat and milk together. Like, okay, this isn't a kosher certified meat or kosher certified milk. My kitchen isn't kosher yet. And whatever, different things, but like at least that's the first thing, not gonna have meat and milk
mhm,
together. And another thing could be like, okay, maybe I'm gonna include like one new kosher food into my diet this week and focus on, like you say, what you can eat instead of what you can't.
yeah.
So that's another thing to think about with the extremes and the all or nothing. And like that's how you stay with it and it's sustainable long term. If you take everything all on at once, you're gonna get burned out and overwhelmed and then like just be back at the beginning or worse. So, like, that relates to, like, choosing nutrition, like, so much. We see that.
And I think it's also important to remember that we have a loving
Mhm.
God. I think so many people think that God is
Yeah.
this like domineering, controlling,
Mhm.
like someone that's condemning us. And when we do something
Mhm.
wrong, we're gonna get, shot with a lightning bolt. We're gonna be struck down. It's
Yeah.
like, no, we have such a loving God that shows us grace and
Yeah.
mercy and compassion. And
Yeah.
if you have thoughts in your head like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or you're feeling a
Mhm.
lot of shame, and actually
Mhm.
in my small group we were talking about the
Mhm.
difference between guilt and shame recently. And sometimes
Oh.
guilt, can be very convicting, like, oh, maybe we have done, something that maybe wasn't in alignment with our values or whatever it was. But shame is different. It's like not just that you did something wrong, but you are wrong. And like that is
Oh.
really something to take note of. It's like that is not from God. Like God does not shame any of us. If we have those thoughts, like that is not from God, and that's not the voice of God.
Yeah, because I learned something similar too, that like if you hear voices are just putting yourself down and it's not make you productive, they say that's the Yetzer Hara, it's how you say in Hebrew, which means evil inclination. And it's the thing
Mm.
that whenever you're leveling up and then you get like voices that are like putting you down, like, oh, you're not good enough, you can't do that, this or that. Like that's the evil inclination. Like that's its job that like it tries to put you down. And like you have to know like when there's negative voices about yourself and it's just like hard criticisms like that, yeah, that's not God and that's not from you, that's from the thing that wants to stop you. So yeah, that's really important what you were saying. And another thing,
Yeah.
like you're like, oh, God's not all like wanting to hurt you and things, like God's like a loving parent and he loves you so much. They say you should think he made the world just for you, meaning that like you're
Mm.
not just like, oh, one out of billions of people, you're insignificant. No, like he cares about every single person and like you're born here for a reason and like you're
Yes.
here because you have a purpose. And so you could think about that to try to love yourself and be like, God believes in me and he's so amazing, so I should believe in myself.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. I was just reading in Isaiah 43 where
Mhm.
he's, like, he who created you, he who formed you. It talks about
Oh
Israel
yeah.
and Jacob, and oh, like
Mhm.
just so good. Yes, I completely agree. Are there any like specific scriptures that come to mind for you that you also cling to?
There's so many. I guess like one of them is love your fellow as yourself, which is
Mm.
Leviticus 19:18. And they say you need to love yourself first to properly love others. And so I think about that because like I really love other people and I want to help people. But it's like they say, oh, you have to put on your oxygen mask first. And like that's still something I struggle with, but I've been doing better. Like,
Yeah.
but if I just like keep giving, 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 like I won't have anything left to give. Just like that giving tree story. Like there's so many similarities you could see in things even that like aren't Jewish text.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's really important. Another one, it's from Rabbi Lauren Eichler Birkin. He said, when we are depleted of our own resources, we are incapable of providing for those around us. So, if I
Mhm.
really want to care and help others, I need to make sure that I'm okay. And
Yes. Yeah,
yeah,
I talk about this so much on the podcast too. So I love that you're confirming because I think it's really
yeah.
important for people listening to the podcast
Mhm.
to yes, hear me say things, but hear other people say things in their own way. So y'all, this goes back to
Mhm.
what I talk about all the time, that the missus comes
Mhm.
first. MRS. Me first, responsibility second, serving others third. And so if you
Mhm.
really care about your roles and responsibilities, the people that you're serving, you will put yourself first, take care of yourself, fill up your
Mhm.
pitcher so that you actually have something to pour into other people.
Mhm. Another thing from the Babylonian Talmud or Eruvin 65a, it says the night was created for no other purpose than sleep. Like really, like what else do we do at night? And
Mm.
we see like our body makes us sleep. Like you're gonna eventually fall
Yes.
asleep, even if you try not to. So that reminds us that God cares. Like we need to rest. Like there's a hustle culture that's like, oh, I should feel guilty for resting, relaxing. I don't know. We shouldn't because like we're meant to. Like there's proof.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we need to rest. We need that. And that's just another cue that our bodies are so smart and we can trust the
Mhm.
signals and cues coming from our body because
Mhm.
we get that cue to rest and we know that we're supposed to, and that's innate for us. But diet culture wants to tell us that for every cue that our body's sending us, whether that's hunger or fullness, that
Mhm.
we need to suppress that or do something different or rely on something external to control our body's signals, when like no, really it's
Mhm.
all internal. We can trust our body's innate wisdom.
It feels like so simple, but at the same time, a radical idea. Like, what? I could trust my body? Because, like, in this culture, it feels like, no, I can't trust myself. I need to be told what to do. I'm like, what?
Yes, exactly, girl. That's what I'm telling everybody every day. Yes, yeah, it's such a simple thing, but it's radical all at the same time. I love how you said that. Is there
Yeah.
anything else as far as, with your culture, with eating, keeping kosher, like anything else that you feel like our audience should know or anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, we could go over some more like scriptures that I really like and like what we think
Yeah,
of them. Is that like in the
sure.
Talmud Bavli, it says if you take on too much, you have taken on nothing. So it goes on more to what we say that like you're
Mm,
just trying to do everything at once. You're not really going to do anything successfully. So like I think this relates to how you always talk about like one step at a time, one habit at a time,
yeah, absolutely. And
right?
like master that, take that step and take it fully
Mhm.
so that you can take the next step and you'll actually get somewhere a lot farther and be more successful
Mhm.
and have better competence in that area versus trying to be scattered, have your attention, resources, energy, time, all the things scattered between a million different things you don't get as far. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I love that.
Another thing is it's a great mitzvah to be happy, Rabbi Nachman says, and like that's the thing in the Torah. But then at the
Mm.
same time, like partly that could cause feelings of guilt and shame that you think like, oh, if you're not feeling happy, now you're like, oh, now am I sinning or something? So I think it's good, like just like with anything and like with diet culture, nutrition, all these everything could always be misinterpreted. So it's just like eating healthy food, like diet culture doesn't own that. Like we can eat healthy food without being on a diet. And so
Mhm.
also that it's okay that like we don't need to be extreme that yes, it's a mitzvah to be happy, but also our feelings are valid if we're upset about something and we can feel our feelings. And like sometimes you have to like read more into it. Like there's other parts of the Torah that do explain how like, oh, there are times to be more sad, like when you're mourning or other things, but just like you don't want to dwell in it too much. And so yeah, I just see a lot of themes with like the all or nothing mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think leaning more into your spirituality and your faith, reading the text can help if you are experiencing disordered eating habits or you're recovering from an eating disorder, reading the text and kind of analyzing and seeing how this either goes against diet culture. Like, I just think it can help you heal from all of that and
Mm,
give you a different perspective, and kind of teach you like, no, this is how eating is supposed to be. This is how meal times are supposed to be experienced, and how
mhm,
diet culture and how the world has
mhm.
shifted things around to change our perspective. Like that's not right, and that wasn't the original intention. So I think diving more into
Yeah,
your spirituality can actually help heal a lot of those things and undo what the world has kind of brainwashed us with.
I know there's so much brainwashing. Sometimes I wish I
Girl,
could I wish I could wash it the other way, like just take out my brain and give it a deep cleaning, get rid of all the
yeah,
nasty brainwashing of the other ones and put back in.
literally, literally. Oh, so good. Which I also feel like reading
Yeah.
scripture and like diving into spirituality, I feel like that has been very cleansing for
Yeah.
me and like rewiring some of my thoughts. So, hey,
Yeah.
there's power to it for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, another thing you reminded me of is how, like, meditation, is so good for our health, we always talk about, and
Mm.
for me, like, when I try it, I get more anxiety, but if I do prayer, it really helps, so it's like that could be a different form of meditation, and another thing to keep in mind is, like, ask God for help, ask professionals for help, like, you're not alone.
Yes, absolutely. And even if you like feel alone, like you're never lonely because God is always with you and God is always near. And a quote that I heard recently was like, if God feels far, he's not the one who moved.
Oh, that's good. That's a good
I was like,
one.
that was really convicting for me. I was like, how do I share that?
I feel like we could go on, and like, there's so much to say about these topics, and, like, it's
Yeah.
so important.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much crossover between
Mm,
diet culture and our health and spiritual
mhm,
text. And so I really appreciate you sharing your perspective and the scriptures that have
mhm,
stuck out to you. I feel like God has really called me recently to speak biblical truth into the health industry.
mhm.
And I'm like, God, I
I
don't
could
really know
see
what that
that.
means. I don't know what that looks like. But it's interesting because every time I say that to
Mhm,
someone, they have the same reaction as you. Is like, I see that for you. And I'm like, wow, that's really confirming. So like praise God for that.
yeah.
So thank you. Yeah, I'm really interested in
Mhm,
it, and it's so organic. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
just seeing these connections, and I know that that's not on accident.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
awesome. Okay, but we always close out with our guests with the same question. But what's something you're
Okay.
going to do this week to make your week better?
Something I really be wanting to do more is more positive affirmations and
Yeah.
relating it to the reason why, like the purpose, which is like motivating. Or it's like, for example, like I'm working on passing my driving exam. And so instead of just being like, oh, I can pass it, or like I'm passing it, something to do is like I'm learning to drive with God's help, and I can do it because I'm capable, and this is gonna like help me accomplish my goals and get places I need to go, like something like that, like to be more
Mm.
mindful of like how I'm talking to myself, and when I'm doing prayers to think of why is this important to me and my capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. We need more positive affirmations in our life for sure. We have such a
Yes.
negativity bias.
There's a Jewish book called Positivity Bias that talks about that. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone go read that. If you have a
Yeah.
negativity bias, which we all do, you probably need a positivity bias.
Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Sharona, thank you so much for hopping on the Be About Being Better podcast today. I appreciate your
Yeah.
time and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Yay. Hey, y'all. Thanks again for listening to the Be About Being Better podcast. I so appreciate you. If this episode made you laugh, smile, think about yourself or your life differently, in any way making your life better, I empower you to share the show with 3 people who, just like you, need to hear this message and have this type of transformation in their lives. I personally read all the reviews of the show and see the Instagram story shares, and it honestly gives me so much joy to see that our mission is making people's lives better. And the reviews really do help in increasing our impact. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that. If you need personalized support with anything discussed in today's episode or need help creating a sustainable, diet-free lifestyle, take my quiz. It's linked below in the show notes, and that quiz will help you see which one of our coaching programs is right for you. Thank you so much again for listening, and here's to being about being better.